Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on saving the world and your business from boring learning. I'm Ashley Sinclair. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager here at Litmos Heroes, and I just wanted to do a couple of housekeeping things with you prior to Mike taking over. Just wanted to let you know that the session is being recorded, so those of you who have to dip off or couldn't join us at all, we will actually be sending this out after the session as well, so you'll have that for your own pleasure later. The session should last about 40 minutes or so, and your key presenter today is Mike Martin. He's Chief Learning Officer at Litmos, our sister brand who manages a lot of LMS, and he has a lot of on-hands experience in learning and development. If you do have questions, we will have a Q&A at the end, so please feel free to use the chat function within this webinar session, and I will make a note of those and hand them back over to Mike at the end of the session. Mike, are you there?
I am here.
Fantastic. Are we ready to go?
We are.
Awesome.
Let's get this party started.
I'll hand over to you then.
All right. Sounds great. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, and an early morning here on the West Coast, USA. Got to tell you first, it's such an honor to be presenting across the pond to my friends over there in the UK. I live here in California, so I'm going to give you a quick disclaimer. I may use the word dude. I may use the word awesome, and maybe even rad from time to time. But to balance things out here, I will try to use the word whilst presenting today. See, I already did it, so I'm ahead of the game here, trying to make sure that we're going to have some fun today. Another quick disclaimer is that I was unable to avoid the flu bug that's been going around globally. And if I clear my throat from time to time or a little cough there, I apologize. Just keep your distance from me so you don't catch it through the interwebs here. But we're going to have a good time today. I'm really excited. Also, maybe you didn't know this about me. We want to get to know each other a little bit, right? So I am quite famous. I'm quite a big deal. Right here, this was me last week on the Today Show. That's right. I was audience member number 22. So this is me right in the center. See, there I am with my little beanie cap on. I'm with my friends Al and Hoda and Savannah and then Carson over there on the left. So I had a good time over in New York. We're going to have lots of fun today. But, you know, I'm not here to talk about why I'm famous, which I'm not really. I was just standing in the audience and we got to do this. But I'm here to talk about why Litmos Heroes is famous and what Litmos does and how we can make your learning programs and everything that you do more famous than it is today. There are some simple steps, and I'm going to walk you through those today. So why are we famous? I mean, our mission is to save the world from boring learning. I mean, that's really the big thing. So today, I'm going to walk you through some 10 tips that aren't necessarily new or mind-blowing, but I mean, they're not even ground earth-shattering, but you may even say duh to them and say, you know, we already know that. That's common sense. But if it's such common sense, I've been a consultant for a long time. I wonder why people don't put it into practice more. So the idea of moving from common sense to common practice is the most important thing that I hope that you get out of today, is that you know this stuff, that we reinforce those 10 top things that you can do to save your employees from boring learning, and that you start to put them into practice. Because often it's really easier to do nothing than to do something. So think about that. It's that way with everything, from going to the gym, weight loss. I mean, how many people made year commitments, right? You made these wonderful things like in January, I'm going to start going to the gym. I'm going to lose a bunch of weight, whatever it might be. And that's the thing, though, is that until the pain of doing nothing, right, is greater than the pain of doing something. I mean, that's the tipping point there. And that's what we want to be talking about today. So typically things don't change until that happens, right? We're just creatures of habit, if you think about it. So today we're going to walk through that, but here's another disclaimer. I have a lot of these up front, right? But another one is that unless you do something with these tips, nothing will change. And you know that, right? So nothing will be different. So I'm going to ask you, your mission in the next 40 minutes, to be committed to doing something. So after this session, that you walk away and you say, okay, one of those 10 things I can do immediately, or there's something in there that I can do, I can put into practice, and I can start doing now that will make a big difference and a big impact. Okay, so with that said, commit. This just, I really want to talk about this wonderful presenter that I saw once and give you this, something that was super memorable for me, which we're going to talk about later with how making things memorable. But he said this, is like, you know, the word commitment is such an important one. A lot of people are involved in things. They go along with the flow, they're involved, they do it, but they're not really fully bought in, and they're not committed to doing it. And that's when change happens. And he mentioned it like this. He said, commitment and involvement are different. He said, commitment is like being the pig in the bacon and egg breakfast. The hen is involved and the pig is committed. I'm going to wait for some laughter. No laughter. Okay, great. But you get the idea, and that really resonated with me because I like the simple things, and I started to think like the idea behind that is so simple and so memorable. Is that how much of this stuff are you really committed to, or are you just doing things because they've always been done that way? You're doing things because that's the way you've always supposed to do that. So today I'm going to ask you to be committed. That's my biggest mission for you, that you can take home something. So with that being said, let's get going. Now, how do we do all of this? How does Litmos and Litmos Heroes save your employees and the world from boring learning? Well, one of the big things, we combine the best of both worlds, a really simple and powerful learning platform with engaging off-the-shelf award-winning content. So the Litmos Heroes stuff checks a lot of the boxes for engagement, and it was very exciting to be working with them and be a sister company. The Litmos platform is what you'd use to serve all of that out, right? And to keep track of all of your compliance and a place for people to go and get excited about that content. So this is what we do. We combine these two things. It's award-winning content, and here's some of these. And I don't put these on to toot our own horn, but we are recognized leaders in the industry, and we do some of the common sense stuff that I'm going to talk about later in the presentation. We do those things internally, and that's what's helping us succeed as well. And so we know a thing or two about all of this learning stuff. And without further ado, let's crack on. Did I get that right? Crack on. I'm trying to use some of these that I'm learning through Ashley. She's teaching me how to be more British. I'm excited about this. So first things first is that boring equals low learner engagement. So think about the last time that you took an online course, or you took one that just was terrible, right? Or anything in your life that you were super excited about and you were super engaged in. Were you bored at the time? Chances are you weren't. Chances are you were excited about it, that it piqued your interest, it was challenging, and many, many other things that we're going to talk about on the next slide. But low learner engagement really will hurt your organization's ability to innovate and create the value that you want. And that's an important thing to think about, is that sometimes it's not just, I mean, often it's not just about compliance. It's not just about showing your bosses that you've checked a box, right? That yes, they've done this training, but what is it really about? It's about making people better, faster, stronger, more adept at what they're doing. And we want to engage them. We want to inspire them. And I think that's lost a lot of times in this what did you do culture. But I'm interested too in how you're being while you're doing what you're doing. Like what are you getting out of it? Are you inspired? Because there's this thing called discretionary energy that I love. This concept is that there's this pool of energy that all of your employees and even you have to give, that no one can make you give. You can't give it away. Nobody can make you do it. It's up to you. It's at your discretion. And you know those people, and you might be one of them, that come in and give 110%, that stay late, that work the extra, that really are committed to what they're doing. And they're the ones that are inspired. They're the ones that are engaged. Now, when we talk about engagement, what is it is an important question, but I think the even a bigger question is that what drives engagement? Like what can you do to drive engagement? And here are some of the big things here, the big ideas that are coming out. And one of them is to challenge people, right? If you want people to engage, you got to challenge them. If they're bored all of the time, think about that idea, is that if you're bored, you're probably not being challenged to the level of your skill. Right? And Dr. C, there's a Csikszentmihalyi, I believe is his name, and he has the theory of flow. Look that up. It's a really great idea of understanding when people hit boredom is when their skill is greater than their challenge, or when they hit anxiety is when their challenge is greater than their skill, right? So when we want to engage people, we want to hit it right in the center there, right in that middle spot where we're driving them and we're saying, hey, learn this is relevant, and you're challenging people to be better than they are tomorrow or today, tomorrow. And the reason behind this is that, I mean, again, think of your own careers. When you start to check out and you start to become just a person filling a seat, or you have people maybe that have quit and forgot to leave, right? It's when they probably aren't being challenged. It's when they're not stepping out of their comfort zones, when they don't feel like there is a path for them. So to have engaged people, give them a little bit of a challenge. Another thing is create stuff with aesthetic appeal. Now, in our Hollywood culture, in marketing, advertising, in commercials and billboards, we're inundated with this, and people use science to get in our brains and understand what is going to track with us and what is going to be memorable for us. And when you're creating training, and when you're creating even the system of training, right, your LMS or whatever, make sure it has some aesthetic appeal. This whole idea of if you build it, they will come is a myth, right? I mean, it's from the movies. It's this, if it looks terrible, it's hard to use. We found that right from the beginning that people will step away from those things. People will step away from it and not engage in the way that they need to. So make things look pretty, I guess, is the point here. Take a little bit of extra time to have a graphic designer look at it and make it aesthetically pleasing for people, so that right off the bat their brains aren't screaming at them to say, oh, this is a threat, this is no fun, this is going to be boring. So think of that as you're going through. Feedback's another big one here. You need to be able to give people feedback. And that's a huge piece. If I don't know what I'm doing, and if it's making a difference and what I'm learning, if I don't have a way of talking to somebody or getting feedback, even written, for instance, how do I know if I'm making any difference? That's the biggest struggle, I think, for online training, is that a lot of times we just put it on there, they take it, and that's it. There's no more. It's radio silence after that. There's no more connecting. And that's where, like, okay, I've done something and now I've learned this concept, I've tried it, but I don't have anyone to talk to about it. So make sure there's opportunities for feedback if you want to engage people, right? So have a blended approach if you can with your courses. Have an idea where they take some stuff online and then you connect with them. In the Litmos platform, we have a thing called boosts where we can actually send them stuff dripped at regular intervals after a training. And that's all automated, so you don't have to worry about it, but it also connects back to this idea of giving them some feedback and keeping it top of mind, right? So keep that in mind as you go through. This is my favorite one, novelty. And as you can tell, I'm pretty excitable. And I understand that the brain craves novelty. And we've done some really great things in learning in the last decade, where we're starting to use fMRI machines and connecting people to them and putting them in different situations. And what they're finding out about the brain is that things that are memorable are novel. I mean, they're more so. So when you think about something like that is way off base and catches you by surprise, that's going to be more memorable and connect better to your brain than other things. So if you're just going through things with the normal PowerPoint and it's just without these breaks, like at the beginning, for instance, showing you that I was on the Today Show, it was just a joke, but the whole idea was novelty, and that might be something you remember from this presentation, right? You might say, well, I don't know why I showed that, but I remember it for some reason because it was outside of the norm of what typically happens in these, right? So always be thinking about how to engage people through novel things. Set them a little bit off balance, but not in a bad way, but just to get them to go, huh, what's this about, and get them excited about it. So novelty is important for engagement. Interactivity, of course, is important for adult learners. We want to make sure that they have a chance to do something, that they're not just passengers in the passenger seat, which is on the right side. I know, yours on the left is weird. No, I'm just kidding, that's great. But have some interactivity where people are doing things, people are having an experience with it, because we know that experience matters. The fact that, for instance, when I'm training people on how to use our LMS platform or how to go through the content in Litmos Heroes, I'm showing them, I'm giving them examples of it, giving them an experience. Now, click on this and click on this and go through here and build this, because you will retain that information better and you'll engage people when they actually feel like they're interacting with your with whatever you're training on. Motivation, that definitely drives engagement, right? How motivated someone is. And we spoke about that a little bit just a minute ago, talking about the discretionary energy, right? Like, how motivated are you? And how motivated are your folks? And do you get them excited about that? Do you get them pumped up about the training and get them excited about what they're doing? So consider that as part of engaging your folks as well. And it has to be of interest to folks, right? Now, if you start training me on things that have absolutely no relevance to me, which it happens all of the time, right? Where you give people things that, like, well, I think this would be good, and they can't see how it will make a direct impact on what they do in the business, direct impact on their lives, or a direct impact on their pocketbooks, right? It's going to be really tough. It's a tough sell when you're doing that. So you got to figure out how to make it of interest to them, how to connect the dots for people to make sure that they can find relevance in that. And it's an important one there. Perceived control. Now, here's a piece that we can get around with online learning quite frequently, is that we can give people that, because we can let them take training anywhere on any device that they want to, right? Whether it be on their phones, on the tube, or wherever it might be, they have this control that they can go through and engage the way that they want to. So that even goes into how you build out your courses. You know, if you lock down the courses, unless you absolutely have to, you lock down the lessons in an order, you can open that order up and let people take them in the order that they want, which is a great strategy if your content allows, right? If it makes sense for that. But adult learners also love, and they'll become more engaged when they feel like they have some control over it, and they have a say in what they're doing, when they're doing it, and how they're consuming that material. And awareness as well. And awareness is just this idea that the people are aware of what's out there, and the people are aware of everything that you're creating for them. Because think of this, if they don't know all of the great stuff that you have for them, and how are they going to engage that. If what people have no idea, then it just doesn't exist. So if you want to engage folks, make them aware, send emails to them, connect with them, show them from time to time, keep it top of mind of the wonderful things that you are creating and the things, and continue to push the awareness of how it's going to matter to them, what's in it for me, which we'll talk about on a later slide too, as being one of the 10 actually, spoiler alert. But that idea of just what's out there, if you're not making it clear what's out there, people will not know, and they won't be able to engage in the way you want them to. Now, those are some of the things. Let me jump back just real quick. Oh, not that way. Let's go this way. Real quick, because we talk about this. Some of these things too also come from learning engagement theory by O'Brien and Toms, and so I just want to let you know that this is stuff that's not just me saying it. This is what's out there in the academic field too. Some of the things that connect with engagement most. Okay, moving on. Now, people, this idea of how many times have you had to chase down learners. Now, we're trying to help you get around this. Now, I don't know if you have this issue, but I've worked at a lot of companies with online training programs where people only log on when they absolutely have to, right? It's a compulsory thing. This is what we call the push model, where we have to push everything to them, like do this, do this, do this, right? And the engagement flips, we want to flip that with engagement, and we want you to be able to have more of a pull model where they're asking for it, right? That they're excited about the benefits that they're going to receive, because that's another big thing for adult learners that wasn't on the last slide. I mean, it sort of was, but the idea that things have to be relevant to your adult learners. They have to know why they're doing something, and that's a huge connector of whether they're going to engage or not. Now, when you simply have a compliance mode, when you're chasing people down, and that's your mindset, now think about the paradigm that you play by, right? What's the paradigm or the filter through which you see your training and you see what your job, and is the paradigm is that you're a compliance manager and you have to get people to check a box. If that's the case, that's a really tough thing to do. We want to be thinking of it as this is a great experience that we want people to engage in on their own. Now, when you're simply in compliance mode, a lot of times you have to use shame more than you really want to, right? Give you an example. I worked for a tire company here in the US that had about 7,000 employees, and we had an LMS. We would send things out, and of course everyone would wait till the very last minute to get things done. And they weren't the most engaged learners. Most of them were people who worked in the tire industry. They worked changing tires for a living. They didn't want to sit in front of a computer screen and do this. Now, what was interesting is that from this compliance mindset that we had at the time, to get them to check the boxes, we used shame in a way that we called it the no bad dog list. And it was strange that it was just funny. It was a funny thing that was mentioned as that, but it's basically a list that went out to all of the leaders in the company and the executives, and it had the people's names on it who hadn't completed the training that they needed to do on time. And no one wanted to be on that, and it became an incredible motivator for people to be. And again, that name stuck for some reason. Like, we don't want to be on the no bad dog list, and people were doing it just for that. Now, that is one way to motivate, but that's not the way that we encourage, of course. So if you have engaged employees and you are being able to, and you're setting up the system and getting them to really understand what the benefits are for them to do what they do, you're going to have a better chance of them not being motivated that way so much, and actually stepping in or pulling the content, asking for it. And it's an exciting thing there that you want them to be in that space. So another quick note, at a roundtable customer event in London recently, I got to visit in November-ish, and it was such a great opportunity to meet folks over there and talk to customers. A topic of discussion was that the expectations of learners are changing from that brute force compliance to a voluntary participation too. They were talking about that and saying we need to, this brute force compliance is an outdated model. And sometimes we, again, being creatures of habit, as we talked about earlier, we just default to the same thing we've always done, right? And that definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I feel like we do that a lot in the online space because it's just easier to do that. So people are asking for it, and we want to make sure that we're moving. So engaging your employees will help you get out of a compliance mindset. To wrap this up in summary, get out of just a compliance mindset and get them into and the brute force, and get them into a I want to do this because it matters mindset. Now, think about this too. How many times have you received negative feedback? Like your customer's reaction to your process of self-paced learning, it was bad. Like from the system to the courses, are they coming back to you and saying that it's mind-blowing, or are they generally positive or not, depending on the content that you have in there? So engagement matters too, again, with the content that you put in there. And when we get to the top 10 points, we're gonna talk more in depth about this. But we're missing the bigger picture here. And what we're not thinking about is engagement, what the person will be able to do as much as did they do it. Again, I keep pressing this and coming back to it, but over and over again, in my work before Litmos, I was a consultant, and I found that was the mentality of the training department. That even from the executives, there were lots of companies where they thought of the training department as a cost center, as something they had to do, but not as this wonderful event, this wonderful thing that can make the business better. Because think about what we do as trainers. Again, we make people better, stronger, faster. How can that not have a direct impact on the bottom line of businesses? We just have to be better about telling our story. And we need to be better about getting people to be positive about the things that we're doing. Now, even in the industry, we're not doing a super good job, right? So the state of corporate training market, $162 billion market and growing. That's incredibly, incredibly huge. But only 4%, a small number of employees, feel that they have a personalized learning plan. They think that it's just a one size fits all. And that's 4% of the people. And 70%. 6% of corporations don't provide mobile learning, which we know that if you look around at any major city, on any major and airplanes, on buses, any mass transit, anywhere you go now, everyone's locked into their screens. And I'm not saying that's a whole different topic, whether that's good or bad, but we want to be able to reach people, again, where they are, to give them what they need, when they need it, how they want it. So this is pretty obvious. I get that. Corporate training remains somewhat broken, though. The market is getting bigger, and organizations keep falling behind in the expectations of the learner, right? We want to have it be more personable. We have the tools and the technology to automate that. We want it to be more mobile. We want it to be more exciting. Yet we keep baking these bland apple pies and putting them in the windowsill and expecting them to eat these. And so the idea is that as a market, we can be doing better too. And we're hearing from a lot of learners and L&D professionals that it's like running in place, keeping things as they've always have, even with the increased demand from the business. The clunky technology, boring content, PowerPoint slide decks, the PowerPoint death, and lots of text on the screen. We have to change up our paradigm. We have to change up the way that we think about connecting with these learners in the online space. And that's an important thing. They're running on this treadmill. All of these things keep happening. It's time for us to get off, and for people to really learn, and to be focused on the learning, not just the box checking, right? Even though I know that in a lot of businesses, in most businesses, people will move towards what is measured, right? So when you're thinking about checking the box, that if your boss is only interested in whether they did it or not, you're going to hit that minimum because you have 1,000 things to do, and you're going to move towards what you're measured by. So if you go the extra mile and they just don't care, chances are at some point, all that extra effort, you're just going to stop doing it and be like, well, they don't care anyway. So that's when you start to move towards that compliance again. So it's about getting everyone involved. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but we want them to learn. So think for a moment, what does learning mean? Is it attending a seminar, doing a class, tracking compliance? It's all that stuff. But at the core, it's getting that message across to the learner. It's our roles in learning development to be focused on people getting better and faster and doing their jobs better and being more motivated and sticking around at our companies longer. Even though I know the hard metric for that is, did they do this or not? But again, we want to be able to track and see that. And I think that's one of the difficulties of our industry, is being able to look at that and say, yes, what we did had a difference on profits going up, or what we did had a difference on, made a difference to this, when there are 1,000 other variables that we can't control for. But we do know in our hearts that, and yes, I'm a heart type person, that what we're doing matters, and it has to be more than just checking the box, because the ability to learn faster than your competitors may be the only sustainable competitive advantage in what we do today, right? When you think about it and how fast things change. I just did a workshop in New York, and while I was out there, and I got on the Today Show, but I did a workshop out there, and we talked about this, is that in retail, think about retail, where things change every month to month to month with fashions and that. And I'm speaking to these folks about this idea that they have to keep up with the changing pace and the changing learners, and be able to keep up with at such a pace. So what's at the base of that? It's us, right? It's us teaching them. It's us creating learning that they can get really quickly and move towards that. Now, if you believe these things, like which I do, of course, I'm very excited about this, and I really firmly believe that we have such an impact on the business. It's our responsibility to create that learning culture, to provide an experience that makes people want to learn. and encourage them to develop themselves, not just because we tell them to and it's good for them, like eat your peas, right? It's more they want to do it because they understand that it's going to make them better, it's going to make them more money, it's going to make them more successful, and eventually and obviously happier in the business. But we have to set the structure and the foundation for them to do that. So we want to say goodbye. This is our Lenny, Litmos. He's our character for the Litmos side. So we want to say goodbye, and Stickman wants to say bye-bye to some of these soulless learning initiatives and give you these 10 tips. Now, once again, not a lot of these aren't going to rock the mind because there is no silver bullet. There's no magic pill. There's no magic aha moment that you're going to have today that goes, oh my gosh, if I just do that, everything will be great, because it's more of a behavioral thing. It's more of a just doing it. That's why I challenged you at the beginning to say, just try something, because if you sit around and do nothing, then you're going to continue to get what you've always gotten, right? So let's think about this and say, all right, with these being said, what are some of the things that we can move towards? Now, here are the top 10 tips from us, the pros. That doesn't mean there are only 10. There are plenty more out there, but here's some things that we want you to keep in mind. Number one, the first one, of course, is making things fun and having your content be engaging and your system be engaging. Videos, visual, going back to that idea of how to engage people, you got to make it something that they want to participate in. If it's just ugly, I mean, think about this. I'll give you an example. I mean, the content that comes out of the Learning Heroes is so fantastic. And being on the Litmos side, when we became sister companies with them, it was just remarkable to see how much excitement they could draw out of with the voiceovers. And I really, really enjoyed what they did, because it ticked a lot of the boxes for engagement. It's short, it's exciting, it's flashy. It kept me interesting. It was novel. And that's the type of stuff that you're going to want to be looking for, whether you build it yourself or you get off the shelf content from us or anyone else. Think about if you enjoyed it. Did it make you smile? Did it make you stop and go, oh, wow, that's interesting? Or did you just labor through it, right? Click, labor through it. If that's the case, it might not be what you're looking for. Now, I know some of you are thinking, I'm in finance and I don't know how some of this can be fun. Trust me, we made, the Learning Heroes have made some really, like asbestos and some other things, made it engaging, like things that you wouldn't necessarily think would be good, could be engaging. They've made them that way, and you can if you're focused on it. Another example here, like if this was your LMS, think about like if this was where you came as a learner and this was your home screen. I mean, immediately, what are the things going off in your brain? Are you thinking, yeah, this is awesome, and I can't wait to jump in. I know exactly what to do. Everything's right here, and it's so easy for me to go through. If you're not, then you're probably like most people, and like me, I'm looking at it going, I have no idea even where to start clicking. There's so much content. It's organized. It's not really even organized. As I look at it, I'm thinking, I have no idea what's happening, and my brain immediately is sending off these move away type signals, right? It's saying, okay, this is not where I want to be. So right from the beginning, I'm already stopping my, I'm making my engagement level lower already just by seeing this. But what if it were this? This is our Litmos Dojo. And actually, if you look in the header, it's not, because this is just an image, but the specks of dust are floating around, right? Everything, the colors are all consistent. There's only 4 things that you can do at the top: home, library, achievements, live session. You immediately know what to do. Here's all your courses in the middle, in progress, overdue. I'm not trying to give you an overview of Litmos, but I'm trying to get you to understand that by just changing it from this to this, immediately my brain's engaged. At least for that little bit, I'm not hindered out of the box to go, oh, wow, that's cool. Look at the news. That's kind of neat how they did the scroll. This is what you want to be thinking. And now I know a lot of you don't have departments where you can build out all this stuff, but I think you can. And I think that you can find it or spend a little bit of time to move from this to this and make your content great. So that's just on the platform side. But again, your content as well. Move from those PowerPoints to something a little bit more engaging. So that's number one. Number 2, shorter is sweeter. Think about that. Highly engaged visual content. Higher engagement equals higher retention. Now, this isn't just us saying that. Again, studies have shown that the adult attention span is very, very low. I mean, think about maybe how many times you've drifted off during this conversation. I'm trying to keep it lively, but webinars are webinars, right? It's the medium. So shorter is sweeter, and that's why I'm not going to take the whole hour with you today. We want to make sure that your content that you're putting out there, much like the Litmos Heroes content, is very short. We're only saying what needs to be said in a way that's engaging for them. And people will stay more engaged, and they'll want to keep going, right? Like, oh, that wasn't bad. But I don't know if you're like me. If I sit there and I see something that says, "Hey, this is going to take you 2 hours," and it's a one video. That's all it is. I'm just sitting there watching a video for 2 hours or an hour. That's just way too long. So consider making your breaking up your content into smaller modules, because adult learners also really like to get things done, accomplishments, right? So if they go through and they do like an 8-minute segment, which is about where I'd say is the high end, then they feel like they've accomplished something and they move on to the next piece. Okay, that means I can do the next one. My father-in-law would always say, by the inch, it's a cinch. By the mile, it's a pile. I know that. I love those types of sayings again. And the idea being that if you take things small, then you can do that. Just like goal setting, you set small goals and you can move towards those big ones. A lot of times we just throw this content at people and say, "Hey, here's an hour-long course," and let's try to shorten things up, make them smaller, break up your content into smaller bite-sized chunks, and make it more palatable for them. You'll get higher retention rates, and you'll also get more smiles. You really will. People will be excited with just that small change that you can make. Number 3, make it personal based on interests, positions, and goals, right? So if you have a smaller company, like the last company I worked for, again, we had about 7,000 people. The company before that, we only had about 600. And we all worked under the same roof. So it was much easier then for me to be able to connect with all of those folks. If you're a global business and you have thousands and thousands of people, this one could be a little challenging. But you can understand from their positions and what they're doing. You can understand from their goals, from their managers and such, what they want to accomplish. And then you can start to put people together into different cohorts, right? And make the learning personal to them, right? Just don't talk in generalities all of the time. Make it personal. Help them understand how it's going to affect them in their jobs. That's one of the biggest problems that I see when I'm consulting with companies about their online systems and their training, is that everything is just so, well, you should do this, kind of like it's nice to have versus a must have. And the nice to haves usually get left on the side of the road when things are busy, right? They really do. It's a nice, yeah, I would love to do that. I know it's important, but I've got to do these things. How do you make training that to where it's a must have? It's like, no, I have to do this and it's important enough for me to do that. Make it personal. Help them understand and make those connections. Number 4, what's in it for me? The WIIFM, right? This is a really, really common thing that's missed, is just answering that. And that goes back into the number 3. It's kind of dovetailed into this one, is really be solid and consistent about how you answer the what's in it for me. To know what it's an important thing. Adult learners really need relevancy. I spoke on that a little bit earlier, but our time is already encumbered by so many competing responsibilities that we need to know how we're doing right now, or what we're going to invest our time in, and that in the future will add value to our lives. And we don't want to bury the lead in learning, right? We want to tell them straight out of the gates. So many times we tell them what they're going to learn, but not what the benefit is, right? By learning this, you're going to be able to do these things twice as fast. You're going to be able to X, Y, Z. We want to teach them the benefits, not just the feature, right? And when we clearly articulate the benefits and learners find success after applying the learning, they begin to find that coveted intrinsic motivation that we all hope for. And that's what we want, is we want people to be intrinsically motivated to move towards getting to doing more. And what I don't think we realize is that it's not just all on them. It's up to us too, to build out the environment that is going to basically support that idea. And if we don't build that environment, how do we expect them to be successful? If you think about it, you could take the best employee and throw them in a crappy environment, and they will bend to the will of that. And the environment's not going to change to them. They will change to it. So we need to be thinking of it from that standpoint. Like us, what's our role in this? Where's our DNA in helping to get people excited and engaged? And one of the ways, again, is answering this, what's in it for me? At the course level, at the learning path level, at the job role level, whatever it might be, we want to be able to answer that question for them. So think about that. If you're not doing that now, that might be a small change you make. Just adding in an extra sentence in your courses, like, hey, this is why it's important, and making it personal to them. Number 5, recognize and reward. People will do a lot of stuff for a badge, a button, or a certificate. And I think it gets a bad rap in our industry, and they call it the badge and button. And in fact, I had a boss that would call me that. He's like, oh, you're the badge and button guy, the rah-rah guy. And I think that he came from a real sales-oriented perspective, and he did his job incredibly well, but he absolutely realized that he needed people like me too, to help with the motivation side too, and to get people to understand, or to get people to engage in a way that he couldn't by just, if I pay him more. Well, no, it's not always about pay. Sometimes it's just about praise and recognition. And people will engage more when you just let them know that they matter. Have you ever had that experience where just somebody, I mean, you waited for it and somebody's like, hey, nice job. And it's meant the world to you, and you felt that rush of adrenaline, and you felt the happy chemicals in your brain start to course through, and you think, wow, that's what I needed from that person, right? And I don't want you to ever get into this this idea that that this is not something important, because recognizing, rewarding people can be the simplest thing you do. A quick email that just says, hey, I saw that, I see what you're working on, it's fantastic, or hey, great job on that last presentation, whatever it might be. And I know that as a culture, like I even asked people to raise their hands at the presentation I did in London, and I was surprised by how few people did, right? Just to raise their hand. Like, if you've done this, raise your hand. Like, nope, not gonna do it. And I thought, okay, I think I'm being really American right now. But again, the point is that just recognizing them with a simple, great job, I saw you, I see you, you matter, can go a long way towards you engaging people. And sometimes that's all people need. And we think about all of these remarkable ways and all of these difficult and elaborate ways that we want to recognize people, when it can just be, hey, thank you. Thank you can be all you need to engage them. So number 5, recognize and reward. Do more of that. And you can do that automatically too, like through Litmos, for instance. And most major LMS systems, you can create things that automatically go out to people, certificates and such that go out to them when they've done a good job and they've finished a course or whatnot. So some of it you might not have time to do, and you can automate some of those things. But as long as they know, the learners know that you mean it, then I think that you're going to see more engaged learners. At least that's been my experience in my work world. Number 6. Pretty simple. We don't have to belabor this one, but people want to take stuff where they're at. They want to learn when they want to learn, how they want to learn. Oftentimes I'm sitting on the train into headquarters from San Francisco Airport, and I'll pop up something and I'll take some training on my phone, on my iPad, on my mobile device of whatever kind. We need to be thinking this, because this is the future. In fact, we can actually track in Litmos where people come from and what devices they're using to access our content. And what we're starting to see is that mobile is making a run on the desktop and the laptop field, right? It's starting to become the most prevalent one, and we need to design for that. And we need to make sure that people have that opportunity to be able to access that content when and where they want to. So make it mobile. Think about your strategy, and is that part of it now? Is that something you should be looking into? Is that something that you'd like to go in and say, you know, can we at least make 1 or 2 of our most popular courses? Can we serve that out in a way that people can access it from somewhere else than their desktop at work? So that might be something to think about as our number 6 tip. Number 7, gamify that experience. Peer competitive leaderboards, make it fun. This kind of goes back to the first one about making your content fun, but make the experience fun. Right, so this is a good example, if you're looking on the screen now, of the leaderboard that we have in Litmos, where Sarka is at the top with 123 badges and points. And again, sometimes that competition, right, just driving that behavior by giving them a chance to have some friendly competition, it gives them instant feedback with rewards. It creates an urge for them to progress, to be better, especially salespeople, who a lot of people say, I've heard a lot the term, they're coin operated, right? They don't do anything unless you put a quarter in them. But I think too that even this challenge, like this is another strategy for people who are competitive, to be able to say, okay, here's the goal. By next month, we're going to have these courses need to be completed. The team with the most completions is going to win X, Y, Z. And bragging rights for days, the gold trophy, and then gift cards from wherever, right? Whatever it might be. But then you can put that together and then have the visibility for people to be able to see on a leaderboard where they stack up, and have that constant reminder that they need to be doing what they're doing, and to gamify it, to make it more fun. Some people really like that video game mentality of, I've just completed this level, what's next? I completed this level, beat the boss, and now I have this badge, and I want to get to the next one. So again, this is not just us saying this. This is a whole industry who's studied this idea of gamifying experiences and making them more fun can lead to more engagement. Number 8, boost their learning. We talked about this at the very beginning, and I talked about the boost aspect of Litmos, the LMS part, of where we can drip content and knowledge days after the learning is complete, where we can start to send stuff automatically. And because you think about it, this whole forgetting curve, right? I mean, you probably have heard the research, and back in the early 1800s. It was a model of how long after a training do people remember things. And this is trying to stave off that learning forgetfulness, right? And it's the idea that after a training is done, that we can start to send stuff out to them. And you should be thinking about that too, whether it's an automated system like in Litmos, or it's just something that you set a reminder on your calendar to do, to send something out like, hey, after this training, here are a few questions to keep in mind. Or what did you think about this? Send me an email. Or how are you giving feedback and continuing the training? I've read articles that say that if you're not providing follow-up, then you might as well not even be providing the training. And I wouldn't go that far, but it is true that by the end of week 1 and by the end of the first month, I mean, you're really down to about a 20% retention rate. I mean, it's pretty amazing how much people forget. But by doing these intermittent things, you can keep their retention rate up high, because their brain starts to say, oh, through the repetition, this is important. I need to keep this and store it. That's one of the strategies. So if you're not following up with folks, that could be something that you do immediately out of the gates too. And try it small, on a small scale. Don't say I'm going to do every course. I'm going to boost every course and try to do that, because you'll drive yourself crazy. And again, by the mile it's a pile, you'll be overwhelmed and you'll probably quit. So what I suggest is take one course and one group, group that you are going to use as your test subject, right? And you do just a little beta test on it, and you see how well it works for you and how well they like that, and what people get out of it and what the retention rate is. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the end of that. But if you want people to be more engaged, and then this is going to make the learning more relevant to them, and they're really going to remember it more, which will help with that engagement. And so this is that forgetting curve, by the way. Just wanted to add this slide in really quickly. So again, at the beginning, 100% when they first learned it, but you can see that by the first day it drops down to 80. But if you reviewed it on that first day, it shoots back up to 100%. And this is what we want to see right here, is this idea of continuing on. So think of that as something that you can add in later on. Number 9, make it a part of their workflow and make it intelligent. There are often just so many employees and so many things going on, it's very difficult for you to track everything. Through Litmos, we tried to make that easy by making the workflow intelligent, to where a lot of things are automated, where you can add people in, and based upon their role and based upon what they're doing in the system and what courses they've taken and what courses they've already taken, that it will automatically set them up with learning paths that fit them, that make it relevant for them. So they're not taking classes that they've already taken or reliving information that they've already relived. We want to try to make it intelligent and make it a part of the workflow from the very beginning. Like if I'm a new hire, I want to be able to pop in and immediately see exactly what I want to be doing or what I should be doing and when done is. Where are the goalposts, right? Like, how do I know if I scored a touchdown or I know that's very American, but how do I know that I've scored that touchdown? So as part of the workflow, I want to be able to see that. And if you have a system, you want to start to leverage that system to start to show people what that path looks like for them. And if you could take that extra step to make it intelligent, you're doing even better, where you're really starting to say, hey, when you're setting rules and automation, where when somebody is added to the system, it triggers all of these things. Like, look at their HR record and see what courses they've already taken or what their experience level is. Based upon that, add these classes to their thing. Add time frames so they can see when to get it done. So another big tip is to try to make it part of what they do, not aside from, like, oh yeah, and you have to take some classes and you got to get this coursework done. Say, no, from the very beginning, this is your path. This is what you're going to be. This is what you're going to do. This is how you're successful here in the business. So that's an important piece as well. And number 10, make time to try. So this one is a big deal. It's like, if you don't actually give people the time to try some of these things and to get in and do the training that you're creating, and so you're not going to have you're not going to have with it too. I think a critical thing training misses is having that one simple applicable thing that learners can do, try, or experiment with immediately after. So I often coach people to add, now you try every part of training. One small thing to try and feel success, and for them to feel success with, that'll lead to another one, and then another one, and more adoption and engagement. So when you're creating your training and you're putting it out there and you want them to be engaged, give them a chance, right? So after the course is over, say, okay, here's what I need you to do. Take this, and like I'm doing with you from the very beginning, right? Saying, hey, try one of these things, give it a shot. Actually, and I'm encouraging you and challenging you. That's why I use the word challenge at the beginning, because I can't make you do anything. You're a long ways away from me. And I wouldn't anyway, but I'm going to challenge you so that you can take that on and be motivated to try one of these things. And you need to do the same thing, right? Make time to try. Give them an example and say, now you've learned this thing on Excel spreadsheets and creating whatever it might be. We want to give you an opportunity to give it a shot, and talk with managers and help them understand that they need to have a chance to implement your training. Because if they don't, then they're just gonna be like, okay, great, I learned that, but I don't know, I don't have any opportunity to try it, and they're gonna forget it, and it will become irrelevant to them, and it will tarnish what they think of your training. So make time to try in all of your courses. Finally, I've given you a bonus here because I want you to know this too, is that you need to care as much as you want them to, right? And so you and your managers. So sometimes engagement isn't only influenced by the high-end content and the best systems, right? It's a behavioral thing too. Consulting with companies in the past, I've always tried to stress that learners often follow two cues: what their supervisors are doing and the attitude that they have towards whatever it is they're doing, right? And do they like it? Are they involved? And what is measured and important to the organization, which I spoke about earlier. So often we do ourselves this great disservice by not making learning important to us as management. And of course, everyone follows our lead because what manager's doing is what I'm going to do too. So it could be a good place to ask the, here, like, think about this in your worlds. How much support do you get from your trainers, right? What is, or I'm sorry, from your bosses, and what's their attitude towards it? I mean, have you ever heard from your bosses like, you have to do this, you have to get them to do this? I don't even want to do it, but you have to get them to do it, and I'm not going to do it myself. And I see that time and time again as a consultant. And until we take a broader approach and not just try to solve the problem by making content flashier, shorter, more mobile, the things that we talked about, I mean, we're not going to see the leaps that we want to see in engagement. We're really going to see things that are there. I mean, we're going to change things, but we're not going to see those leaps because you have to care as much and your bosses have to care as much. And that's a tough thing to do. I know, trust me, I've been there, done that, tried that, and failed and succeeded in many parts too. But until they take it seriously and then they're setting the example and the cue to other people, to the people down the employee line, until that happens, they're not going to take it seriously either. So none of the stuff we've talked about will matter as much as this one, is if you can get people to buy in and understand it. But I think that goes back to us really showing how powerful training can be and why it really does sit at the core of any successful business. Because the better the people, the better the processes and systems, the better that people do the work that they are hired to do, the more motivated they are, the more they give their discretionary energy to us, the more profits we're going to make, and the bigger the business will get, and the more we'll take over the world. So I'll leave you with that, with the care as much as you want them to, because again, I think it's a really important piece. Some of the other things are more technical or tactical, actually. Tactical pieces. This is more philosophical on the big side, to start to say, how do we have buy-in, or are we just checking boxes? Because again, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. Thank you so much. That's it. That's the wrap. I will take questions. I went 8 minutes over from the 40 minutes, but I hope it was worth it to you. And if there are any questions, let me know.
Hey, Mike. Yeah, thank you so much for that. That was super interesting. I've made some really great notes. I just really loved your idea of kind of commitment and doing something. And I think something else that wasn't kind of said is being consistent as well. It was really interesting. I've got some stats here on the webinar side, and when you actually showed that dojo view, I can see around attentiveness with the webinar, and that actually spiked a lot after you showed the old LMS versus the new LMS, which I just thought was super interesting. Anyways, we do have a couple of questions which I want to pose over to you. So we've got the first one from Martin Lay, and he asks, how do you motivate old school learners or those who don't like computers?
Man, I always have those come to Jesus talks with them, right? Like, I think sometimes it takes you just sitting down with them. And my approach has always been to try to make them my allies. And the way that I've done that in the past, to give you a specific example, is to show them the relevance of what we're doing, right? Is to get them to understand and buy into the fact that if they do this, they're going to be smarter and they're going to be faster, or whatever you're trying to learn it. And to really sit down and just have that talk with them. Like, so what are the barriers for you? And just asking questions more than you're telling them things. Like, I always start with this idea of inquiry, right? When I'm doing, I'm always like, hey, tell me more about what's going on for you. Like, is it difficult? Is there something in the way? Is there, like, what can I remove for you as a barrier that will help you engage more? And I've always found very successful results by doing that. Say, like, is this something that you don't feel like? Because you got to understand why they're not doing it. Is it that they just, like you said, old school learners who may not be super proficient with computers, maybe that's the issue. If you can remove that barrier and teach them, maybe that's it. They're just proud, and it's like, oh, I just don't know how to access it, and I'm not good with computers. Hey, I can help you with that. And then that's the problem that you solve. But if that's not it, if it's like, well, I just don't see this as relevant. Look through give me an example. So, and then that's what would be my, show me, give me an example. Okay, yeah. So, and then work through that to really start to say, well, what would be relevant for you? What are some of the things that you really think that if you learned and you could apply immediately, that would be fantastic for you to connect in, and what would engage you, right? I just asked that question, and then if you start from this this inquiry mindset of just tell me more, tell me more, tell me more, you're going to figure it out, and you're going to have a good conversation with them. And I'm not just saying this because it's absolutely true, is that some of my biggest detractors, the people who didn't believe in what I was doing, became my biggest allies. And in fact, that happened at Build.com, which is the company I worked for second to last, and I was the director of training there for 5.5 years. And when I started with their management team, I did all of these crazy team building things and all of this stuff. And I had one guy named Jason, and he was just absolutely did not want to have anything to do with it. He wouldn't talk. And then he started staying after class more because I realized like I needed to talk to him, right? So I started focusing on him, answering his questions, making him feel comfortable. And by doing that, he started staying after class. And then he ended up staying every day when we would do our courses. He would stay after, and he would ask me more questions. And we would have, and it was a little bit more work on my end to really get him on board. But then once he became one of my best friends in the world, and he became my biggest advocate as well. And he was in a position as being the chief operating officer to be able to influence a whole lot more people. And so it was a really, really good thing. So sit down with them, be inquisitive, ask questions, find out what the barriers are, and try to remove those barriers is what I would say off the top of my head.
That's great. And I think it ties in kind of what you said earlier about what's in it for me as well. So I think that's some great tips. Another one from Pete Brady is basically kind of asking around the kind of compliance piece. So he was referring to the naughty list, like, the kind of non-completers of the world.
Yeah.
How do you actually kind of avoid just generating kind of learning for people who haven't done that? So, how would you suggest avoiding that for mandatory learning requirements?
Man, I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you when I don't know something, because I think this is an elusive beast. And I'm going to say that your guess is as good as mine, because I don't want to make stuff up for you. And I want to make sure that I'm being honest here. That is a tough one. And it's one that I fought in my career too. It's like, how do you get people to be just to not think of the only motivation being a shame type thing, right? And how do you get around that? And here's my only answer though, and the thing that I've seen that works, and that's again motivating the management and getting their bosses to understand how important this is. I guarantee you that the no bag dog list, the naughty list, right? If you look at all of those people on the list, and we've done this before when I worked at the tire company, their managers were ones who weren't super engaged, and you could see a direct correlation between the management and the learners and the employees, because again, if you consider it, as an employee, I'm going to follow the lead of my manager. And if they don't think it's important, I don't either. I'm busy enough as it is to make that something that I'm going to do on my own. So for me, I would say the first step there would be to connect with them and connect with the managers and see what their engagement level is and how important they think this stuff is. Because I'll bet you'll find a correlation between the people on that list and the managers not being engaged too. So if you figure that out, give me a call, send me an email. That's one strategy that I've seen, but I don't think that there is again that silver bullet to fix that yet, that I've seen anyway. And I'm open to anything.
Yeah, well, I think, and it kind of depends on your organization and what sort of compliance you're delivering. So like you said, it's a tough one to kind of holistically answer. We do have a couple more questions if you still have a bit of time to go through a couple
Absolutely.
more. One from Heidi Exton, kind of, again, a slightly more how long is a piece of string question, but she's asking how you can actually evolve to mobile learning when the organization you operate in is regulated and therefore the content can't be freely shared outside of the organization.
Right. So is that a quick question though? Would that be like, do they have to do all of their training on premises? Is that, or can they take it at home from their home computers? I think that I would wonder about that. If it's an on-premise thing, yeah, that's a tough one. Because if there are regulations, rules, policies, procedures that prohibit content from leaving the grounds, then mobile learning probably isn't a strategy that would be available to you at this point. If it's something like, yeah, people can jump online. I mean, you think about like our LMS, for instance, Litmos, it's SOC 2 compliant. It's as safe as possible. I mean, it really, really sets up the scene. Like people can't download stuff from it. They can, but anybody could record their screen or record it with a phone, but they could do that at work too. So the system helps with that. Even with the mobile stuff, the same kind of thing. They could screen record or they could take a screenshot on their mobile device. But again, they can't download the content and they can't share it freely. Only them with their accounts can log in and see that. I think that there's a piece of that we just, of course, people can. It's like if somebody wants to, if they really, really want to do it, they're going to figure out a way, right? But for the most part, and if your stuff can leave the premises, then I think that you find a system that's just that has the security enablement, like what we have, the security protocols that will keep it all safe, and then there has to be some trust there too. If they can't, then I would say that yeah, it's a tough, that would be a tough sell.
Yeah, I mean, she's saying it's banking, so pretty regulated. So
You know, we work with a lot of bankers, though, right? I mean, we have customers on the Litmos side in the banking industry, and our solution has been able to work for them, and they've been able to do that. So again, I don't know what it's like over there, and there might be different regulations, but off the top of my head, that's what I think.
Yeah. Okay, and then Pete has another question. He has a lot of questions. Thanks for contributing, Pete. Really appreciate it. He was asking around your gamification piece. How do you engage with people who aren't competitive to participate? So he's basically had experience with actually learners completely disengaging with gamification because they're not really competitive in nature.
Right. I think that make it teams, right? Like take the team approach. People are more willing to contribute on as a team when they can feel like they're not the star of it, right? When it's not just their name up on the leaderboard, it's not their name in the spotlight. There are a lot of folks like that, even me to an extent. It's like, yeah, I'm not so much on the competitive side. I'm not a huge sports fan, right? Like I'm not, but I'll tell you what, you put me as part of a team though, and you say, okay, this group out of Warrington, or this group or the sales group is going to be, and make it a team effort. You can gamify at that level, and people will, because there's some anonymity in there, right? People can blend into the background in that, but they still can contribute, and they can still feel that rush of their team winning, right? So that's one of the strategies that we've used in the past to help companies that have people, have a good group of folks who are just like, yeah, that's not my thing, and it might not be everyone's thing, and that's okay. I mean, even if because gamification and that leaderboard stuff, they don't have to be on the leaderboard. It's not like you have to compete. It's like this is for who want to and who opt into it. It's not a mandatory type thing. So I think those two things is making sure that people understand it's optional. It's all good if you don't want to compete. Nobody's going to say anything about that, and it's all good. And enter in that whole team side of it, right? Like we're gonna put people together in teams in different branches or whatnot, and get them excited about getting courses done, or to see where they fall on that leaderboard as well.
Perfect. And I'm just conscious of time, so we do have a couple of other questions. So if it's okay, Mike, maybe
Okay.
I can post them to you. I just don't want to kind of steal too many people's time. So kind of talking a little bit more around what you were saying from Heidi's question around banking and regulation. Vanessa has asked around what about working with a company that's reluctant to involve external consultants like Litmos because they think all the experts are in-house.
All the experts are in-house?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, man, that's a big conversation. And I think that I would ask them, well, the first thing I would do if they think that all their experts are in-house is I would say, you're probably right. I would say that a lot of the expertise that you need is probably in there. And how do you leverage it though? How do you make it accessible for absolutely everybody in your company? And in order to do that effectively, you're going to need a system to be able to manage that. That's how I'd go about that first question, because you're right. If you have experts internally who want to train, who want to build courses, just operationalize that. Create a system that will support that. And then, and of course, there are great consultants and people out there that come in and give you an expert opinion, or help you illuminate blind spots. Because I mean, on that side of the coin, that's what I would talk about. I'd say, I feel like we all have blind spots as companies, as people, as employees, and sometimes it just takes that third person to look at it and give you a different perspective, right? And I mean, that would be my sales pitch. Just say, it's not about trying to spend all the money on consultants because they know what to do. It's just about them seeing the world differently, asking questions and that we wouldn't have asked, and being able to illuminate blind spots for us. So for me, I would take those two tacks. I would start talking in that realm, but then also to legitimize and operationalize the experts you already have, and give them a system to which they can take that and make it in a platform that anyone can take it anytime, anywhere, and really leverage that talent.
Great. I think that's great advice. And just the last question, and then we'll relinquish everybody. Sorry, it's kind of overran, but hopefully this Q&A session's been really useful for everybody who's still on with us. Francis is asking, kind of carrying on from what you said as one of the tips around making it part of their workflow. They're actually wondering, how do you bridge the gap between what they learn online and actually apply on the job? So she's given an example around, let's say, an 8 to 15-minute online session followed by an application on a live sales call, for example.
Yeah, thanks, Francis. There are a couple things. I mean, if you have people on site, you can pull them into a room and have them do it. Like, let's say that it was a sales, show me your best answer, your best greeting. Like when you answer the phone, what's it look like? Or your best, pitch on this product. And you do the training, and then you have them showcase that. You can do in a room, on site, and I think that's what we did at Build.com. We were a retailer in the home improvement space, and we had about 250 sales employees, and we'd have them do the online training, and then we'd break them up into cohorts and have them actually present it to their manager, either formally in a room, or they at some point had to walk by their manager and be like, hey, you got a second? I want to do this pitch for you, and then the manager would check them off. Again, using Litmos as the system of record to be able to keep track of that. But you can also do it in more unique ways. Let's say that you have people all over the world, or people who are remote. Have them videotape themselves doing it and send it into you. I mean, Litmos, for instance, has a feature called the video assessment, because we had customers doing that themselves using their phones. And they said, you know, it would be really great. Customers told us this. It would be really great if we could see them do a behavior, like see them do something, and then grade it with a star, 5-star, 4-star, and then give them feedback, and then say whether or not that passes. And so we actually built that in. That became part of our platform several months ago, because customers wanted it, and it makes a lot of sense. So now you can say, hey, now that you've done this and we've had the training, what we need you to do is to go online. We need you to go ahead and do these 3 things: videotape yourself through the app, and send it into us, and then we'll grade that and let you know how you did. In fact, we had our kickoff sales call at Litmos last week, where all of our salespeople came in from all over the world, and we're online and all that. And then we actually put a learning path together in our own system for them. So they have 2 weeks to get to actually show us how they pitch the sales deck, and using that type of solution. So those are the 2 things I would say: pull them into a room live, or record it, and have some system by which you can track that and get people to show you the experience. But people need to try it. And then you need to be able to give them feedback, because if you don't, they'll go, okay, I tried it, but was that good? Anyone? Anyone? Was it okay? I guess it was good. I have no idea, and moving on. And that's really tough when it comes to really making sure that people are learning and getting it the way you need it. But again, you can't do that with everything, and that's kind of a ivory tower, like a best case scenario. So do that as much as you can with the most important stuff. The absolute most important, especially onboarding stuff. When people are brand new, you have brand new salespeople, it's a great time to use that and to make sure that they're getting it done right the first time, setting the stage, and then they're going to build off of that instead of something that you don't want them to build off of.
Brilliant. Right. Well, I'm super conscious of time, Mike, but that that was super interesting. I've been in LearnTech for about 5 years myself, and there was some really interesting stuff that I hadn't really thought of there as well. I feel a few blog posts coming on. But yeah, thank you so much. Just for those of you that still are online, this has been recorded, so we will send you the recording as well, just in case you want to revisit anything. There's that dreaded lurgy finally cropping in there, Mike, I see.
Thank you. Yeah, I kept it till the very end. Cover your mouths, everybody.
Thank you so much for that.
Breathe.
That was super insightful. Really appreciated it. And just wanted to say as well, on the continuation of British education, remind me to tell you what a cheeky Nando's is at some point.
There we go. I can't wait. Thanks for sticking with me, everybody. I appreciate it. Hope I wasn't too American for you, and I hope you enjoyed the talk.